Picture this. High on a ridge in South Korea sits the apex of American military technology, the THAAD missile defense system. Its massive radar and truck-mounted launchers are constantly scanning the sky, explicitly placed there to protect against North Korea's nuclear threat. But suddenly the orders come down, the radar goes dark, the interceptor missiles are packed up, and for the first time ever they are shipped thousands of miles away to the Middle East.
I mean, just the visual of those massive launchers rolling off that ridge, it's striking, and it really represents this profound real-time shift in global security.
Right, and that is exactly the core tension we're getting into in today's deep dive, because we've got a brand new, barely 2-week-old war in Iran, right? And it's already burning through U.S. military resources at just a staggering rate.
Absolutely staggering, yeah.
So to fight it, America is actively stripping its stated priority theater, the Indo-Pacific, of its most crucial defenses.
And the ripple effects of that are massive. We're going to explore how this sudden shift is leaving vital U.S. allies completely exposed, how it's, handing China this really unexpected geopolitical boost, and why it's accelerating this massive middle power arms race across Asia.
Because for you listening, an Iran conflict might seem like a localized Middle East issue, but this domino effect, it is fundamentally rewiring the global balance of power, world economics, the future of military alliances, literally overnight.
It's happening so fast.
Yeah.
And to really grasp the whiplash of this strategic pivot, we have to look at the promises that were made, right? Because what the U.S. military is doing today is directly contradicting years of promises to its Asian allies.
Oh, entirely. Look at Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Just last year at a Singapore security conference, he said, quote, "No one should doubt America's commitment to our Indo-Pacific allies." And he specifically said, "We will continue to wrap our arms around our friends."
Wrap our arms around our friends.
Right, which is this very specific, comforting image of like an immovable security guarantee. But then look at the actions on the ground over the last few weeks. It's totally different.
Yeah, before the Iran war even officially started, American commanders had already redirected a massive carrier strike group away from the Western Pacific, sent it straight to the Middle East.
And now they're pulling these highly sophisticated THAAD air defenses out of Asia entirely, which South Korea is the only Asian ally hosting this specific system, right?
Exactly. And we should clarify what THAAD is, because terminal high-altitude area defense, these aren't just your standard issue interceptors. They are the apex defenders of the American arsenal.
The absolute top tier.
Right. They have these incredibly precise radars that can track and literally crash into incoming ballistic missiles at multiple altitudes. They're there to stop the absolute worst-case scenarios.
And most of them are already in the Middle East, right?
Yeah, at least 5 systems were already there. In Asia, you only had them in Guam and South Korea.
Oh.
So moving them's a huge deal. Ely Ratner, the former Assistant Secretary of Defense, he actually pointed out that this sends what he called a terrible signal.
A terrible signal, especially now.
Right, because Seoul already has deep anxieties about the Trump administration's commitment to Asia. So taking these interceptors away, and maybe even the launchers next, if they figure out the logistics, is just a monumental shift.
To really get why this is such a bitter pill for South Korea, you have to think about what they went through just to get that system installed back in 2017.
The economic retaliation from China was brutal.
Exactly. It's, think about it like this. Imagine you install this massive state-of-the-art security system on your house, right? To protect yourself from your dangerously unpredictable neighbor, which is North Korea.
Makes total sense.
But the second you put the cameras up, your homeowners association just goes ballistic.
Right. They fine you. They sanction you.
They make your life miserable, which is what China did. They viewed that radar as a threat, so they sanctioned South Korean businesses, banned tourism, applied all this diplomatic pressure.
But South Korea took the heat. They absorbed those economic blows because the security company, the U.S., promised them this system was essential for their safety.
Yes. And then, years later, after you've paid the price and ruined your relationship with your biggest economic partner, that same security company shows up, unbolts the cameras, and drives off because they need them across town.
The psychological blow of that is just, it's profound. You can actually hear the resignation when you read the quotes from South Korean President Lee Jae-myung.
Yeah, he had to address his cabinet about it.
Right, and he publicly admitted that his government opposed the Pentagon's relocation. But then he said, quote, "It is also an undeniable reality that we cannot fully have our way on this matter."
Cannot fully have our way. Wow.
It's the sound of a sovereign nation realizing their national security is entirely tethered to a distant superpower's shifting priorities. They thought the security umbrella was bolted to the bedrock, and now they're watching it roll away on wheels.
And the vulnerability, it doesn't just stop at military exposure, right? Because pulling these defenses out creates this immediate economic shockwave.
Oh, absolutely. The two are completely intertwined.
Because Asia is the manufacturing powerhouse of the globe, but that engine runs almost entirely on fuel from the Middle East.
Mhm.
So the moment the war in Iran broke out, oil prices spiked instantly.
Stock markets across Asia took a huge dive. Investors were just panicking over supply chain disruptions.
We're seeing literal gasoline rationing hitting U.S. allies right now, like the Philippines.
Yeah, and Japan's situation is arguably even more precarious. Something like over 90% of their oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz.
90%.
Right. So that waterway gets blocked or Middle East energy infrastructure gets hit. Japan's economy basically grinds to a halt. Sunil Watanabe, he's a senior fellow at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation in Tokyo. He called this combined economic and military crisis a nightmare scenario.
A nightmare. And this immediate economic...
Or a Japanese factory has to slash production because energy costs doubled overnight. Those abstract promises about America wrapping its arms around you, they lose all their weight.
That makes sense. They don't have to invent a narrative.
Exactly. China can just point to the empty ridge where the THAAD missiles used to be. They could point to the skyrocketing gas prices.
They're essentially saying, like, look what relying on America gets you.
Yeah, and China's right next door. They're offering economic integration, physical proximity, regional stability, and they're contrasting that against a superpower that is currently bogged down thousands of miles away, burning through resources in a totally different hemisphere.
Okay, so if you're an Asian nation, right,
Oh.
and you can no longer rely on the U.S. for a physical security umbrella, and you can't rely on them to protect the economic stability of your shipping lanes, the only logical conclusion is that you have to buy and build your own weapons.
You have to defend yourself.
Right, you have to defend yourself. But the numbers we're looking at in these sources, the American war machine's lack of depth makes even that solution nearly impossible, doesn't it?
It really does. The rapid shifting of weapons out of the Indo-Pacific has exposed this massive structural flaw. The defense industrial base, the whole arsenal of democracy, is dangerously shallow right now.
Just unable to keep up.
It simply cannot produce weapons fast enough to sustain a major conflict and arm allies at the same time. Let's look at the military math with Patriot interceptor missiles, for example.
Oh, this part was staggering to me. So these are the workhorses of modern air defense, right?
Yeah.
And they cost nearly $4 million each. And the U.S. produced roughly 600 of these in all of 2025. But in less than 2 weeks of this war in Iran, the U.S. and its allies have already burned through more than 1,000 of them.
Over 1,000 in 2 weeks.
I mean, how does the United States, with a near $1 trillion defense budget, blow through basically 2 years of specialized missile production in 14 days?
Well, it's because the consumption rate of modern warfare vastly outpaces peacetime manufacturing. You can't just, flip a switch and build highly sophisticated $4 million kinetic interceptors overnight.
Right. They need specialized components, rare materials.
Highly trained labor, all of it. Firing 1,000 interceptors in 2 weeks exposes that factory capacity is fundamentally mismatched to wartime demands. And it's not just the missiles themselves. The financial burn rate is just astronomical.
Unbelievable. Pentagon officials told Congress the estimated cost of the Iran war exceeded $11.3 billion.
In just the first 6 days?
In 6 days. That's almost $2 billion a day just to keep the interceptors flying and the operations running.
And sure, the U.S. is trying to adapt. They're shifting toward cheaper bombs for airstrikes, and they struck a deal with Lockheed Martin to try and triple Patriot production by 2030.
But 2030 is a lifetime away when missiles are flying across your borders today.
Exactly. This creates a flashing red light for every country in Asia. Because during the Trump administration, a lot of these allied nations agreed to increase their own military spending. They budgeted billions to buy American hardware.
They wrote the checks.
They wrote the checks.
Yeah.
But now they're realizing that even with cash in hand, the U.S. supply chain is just too clogged to deliver.
Right. The backlog is a logistical nightmare. Look at the Japanese government inquiry from this past January. They uncovered 118 separate orders for American weapons. We're talking $7.2 billion worth of defense contracts.
And none of it delivered.
None of it. 5 years after the contracts were originally signed? I mean, imagine allocating billions to secure your borders, and half a decade later, you're still waiting for the shipment while the security environment around you actively falls apart.
And if you're a middle power in Asia, you can't wait 5 years for an order of missiles that honestly might just get redirected to the Middle East the moment a crisis breaks out anyway.
Wow, yeah, that's entirely possible now.
So this realization is forcing a massive historic pivot. We are watching the real-time acceleration of an unprecedented arms race in the Indo-Pacific. Nations are moving away from U.S. integration and sprinting toward total self-reliance.
Like Japan. I mean, historically constrained by a pacifist constitution, and now they're actively developing their own long-range missile systems.
And South Korea took a massive step just this past October. They secured U.S. approval to develop their first nuclear-powered attack submarines.
Which some defense experts are saying is a direct stepping stone toward building actual nuclear weapons in the future.
They're laying the industrial groundwork to protect themselves by any means necessary. The whole security architecture of the region is fracturing and reforming because that illusion of guaranteed American protection has been totally shattered.
You know, there's a devastating juxtaposition in the source material that I think perfectly captures this shift in trust. It's the contrast between two very different statements. First, you have South Korean President Lee reflecting on this, and he comes to this really chilling conclusion about national survival.
What did he say?
He said, quote, "If we rely on others, there are times when that dependence can collapse. You always have to think about what you're going to do if there's no external support."
I mean, that is a profound shift in national doctrine, born out of pure necessity.
Right. And then you compare that survivalist mindset to what the Pentagon said when reporters asked them to comment on the region's growing anxieties.
Oh, this is wild.
They didn't offer reassurances. They didn't repeat Hegseth's line about wrapping arms around friends. The Pentagon literally just responded with a brief email that read, "We have nothing to provide."
We have nothing to provide. It's just a stunning admission.
Right.
The material reality of a drained supply chain has completely overridden whatever diplomatic intent they had. The U.S. just cannot arm its allies with rhetoric.
To go from "we will wrap our arms around you" to "we have nothing to provide" in a single year, it's breathtaking. And it highlights exactly why this deep dive is so crucial. Global security isn't just a series of isolated events, right? It's a closed-loop system. For everyone listening, a sudden conflict in one hemisphere instantly drains the defensive resources of another. We're watching how a war in the Middle East impacts global shipping lanes, dictates the price you pay for gas, and actively rewires the balance of world power.
When you synthesize everything we've unpacked today, it paints a very stark picture. A localized two-week war has completely exposed the critical shallowness of the U.S. military supply chain.
Yeah.
It's handed Beijing a huge geopolitical victory by highlighting American unreliability. And it has forced Asian allies to accept that the security umbrella has holes in it, prompting them to aggressively rearm themselves.
The dominoes are falling, and the countries left behind are looking at that empty space on the ridge, realizing they are finally, truly on their own.
Which leaves us with a really critical question to ponder, because we're just seeing the beginnings of this pivot to self-reliance today. But play this out a decade from now.
Right, what happens next?
If middle powers like South Korea and Japan decide they can truly never rely on the United States again, and they build massive, completely self-reliant military complexes,
Yeah.
what happens if they cross that final threshold? What happens if they develop their own independent nuclear capabilities?
That changes everything.
It would fundamentally shatter the long-standing post-World War II world order. So the question you really have to ask yourself is, does a fully armed, independently powerful, heavily militarized Asia ultimately make the world more stable or vastly more dangerous?